start on the US side with that? I will,
Yes. So yes.
all right, just pulling up the talk again.
No problem.
We'll be starting with Tori.
Okay, great. So
you want me to take it from here, Laurel?
are you guys set? Okay.
Sure.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yes. So what you see here is just kind of a screenshot of several of the products that we've created. And I'm going to go through these. We created a Shiny app that kind of hosts all of these products. So there's a ton of data that goes into this and a ton of outputs. So we needed kind of like a home for it all. So I'll show you that in a minute. Next slide. I think Laurel covered this a little bit, but there's several other data portals available, and they all kind of have their own unique flavor and data that they're showing. So we wanted to build something that wasn't too redundant, but also build some of our products into some of these other portals that can kind of augment each other. Next slide. And that takes us to the Shiny app. So I'll share my screen and give everyone a quick demo of our Data Explorer. So this really came together because we were collecting a lot of inshore data sets. So we have the federal trawl survey, but we also, each state in our area also collects data as well. And so I kind of wanted to create a place to kind of host all of that together. So you can see, Maine, New Hampshire alongside Connecticut, and this might be the first place where you can really see all that data in one place. So we have a few different sections of the app. The survey view kind of is an overview, kind of a high level, bird's eye view of all of this different survey data. Species view, you can dig into individual species and see some of the trends and their abundance.
Tori, we're not seeing your screen. Are you sharing the app?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see here.
Yeah, I don't see it. I did the window view, if that's helpful.
Oh, there we go. We can see it now.
Okay, perfect. Great. So maybe somebody can throw the link into the chat. It really would be great if people had a chance to kind of look at it on their own screen while I go through it, or after the meeting. So where was I? Okay, so survey view, bird's eye view, species view, dig into an individual species. Models are what Chris Hake has been working on. So that's some of the species distribution modeling, and then the habitat crosswalk. I think Laurel covered that a little bit as well. So I'll just run through kind of what you can see here and how it works. So when you first hit a page, you can select regional or inshore. So this is just, do you want to see all of the surveys together, or do you want to look at a particular bay or coastal region? So I'll stick with regional. And then we'll start with the NIMS bottom trawl. These year ranges, they automatically populate depending on which survey you select. And then when you hit run analysis, you see the kind of the spatial footprint of the survey where the tows took place. And this will update as you select a different year range. And then you see your top 20 species by abundance here across time. Okay, maybe don't go on the app right now. And then as well as biomass. So top 20 species by abundance, by biomass, species list. So you can sort by name, you can search by name, you can look at, you can sort by abundance, you can sort by biomass. So it just gives you an idea. This is across all years in this instance, how many of this particular species were seen in this particular survey. So like I said, we've got the NIMS bottom trawl, which is a regional survey, and then we have a ton of inshore bottom trawls as well as SANE surveys. So they go across this entire region, Maine to North Carolina. And just recently we added a small section along kind of the southeast area. The cluster analysis shows you which species are caught in a survey together. So the closer they are on the cluster, the more likely they are to be seen together, or the more likely they were caught together. And then if there's any temperature or salinity data, that shows up here. So that's separated into seasons and across time for temperature and salinity. And then we also created these metadata pages for each of our surveys. So this is just goes over who collects the data, what type of data is it, what are the ranges, what's the geographic scope, overview of the methods, a little more deeper information on the methodology, any caveats, and then how to access the data. So all of our data sets, we have these metadata pages for, and then when you're on this page, you can directly access them or go to the metadata link here to see all of them together. For species view, so you can select a species here. We'll start with alewife, for example. And what this does is it automatically populates all of the surveys that catch this species. So then we can look at a distribution map. And so this is all of our surveys together that have caught alewife, the abundances. You can look at an individual season, so spring versus fall, for example, and you can also look at years. And so you can look at an individual year and you can hit this little play button and it will scan through each year. Or if you want to look at a particular range, you can do that too, or a series of ranges. So this is really just giving you a chance to kind of dig into a species. If you want to look at one survey at a time, you can do that. If you want to combine multiple surveys, you can do that too, with the caveat to consider the methods that are used by each survey. We also can look at abundance and biomass across time. So that's each of these surveys. You can click on just one at a time if you want to pull out just one, or you can look at them all together. We created these relative abundance plots. And so these, which you'll see in just a second here, they break the survey into salinity zones. So looking at tidal fresh, mixing, seawater, and then adults and juveniles. And so it shows the relative abundance in different time periods for each species. So it gives you an idea. White means, the survey wasn't conducted there. This purple was conducted, but the species wasn't found, all the way ranging up to, I think, common and maybe very abundant. Yeah. So that gives you an idea of kind of cross time and in these different salinity zones where you're seeing the species. We've also broken this into length data. So for some of the more consistent and more reliable data sets, I put together kind of a log count of juveniles and adults, and we're using the length at maturity of 25 centimeters for alewife, but this updates automatically for each of the species that we do. And so you can kind of see the count of different age classes across time. You can see the distribution on the map, and then you can kind of see the length ranges. So what size are each of these surveys catching? For species report, so this gives you a chance to learn a little bit more about the species. So we have a narrative, which goes over the climate vulnerability. There's a profile, which is background and life history. And then if it's available, we have essential fish habitat designations for each of these species. And not every species has all of them, but as you move around, you'll see most species, well, we have about 300 plus species in here. So most of the common species have all three of these. So models, Chris will go over this in more detail in a few minutes. So I'll just kind of breeze through this. But basically, you can dig into the model outputs here. And so you're able to select a species. So in this case, I have winter flounder adult here. You can separate a spring and a fall projection and look at how the true catch compares to the predicted catch. You can look at the smooth terms, the different covariate effects. So that's all here. If you want to look a little bit more into variance explained, so what do we think is driving, or what's the model predicting is driving these species distributions, you can look at that here. And so you're able to select multiple species on this page and compare, winter flounder juvenile adults, but you could also compare that to another species. And then the variance significance tells you of these covariates, which ones are statistically significant. And then I think something that's kind of unique to the models that Chris is doing is this species correlation matrix. So this kind of helps pull out potentially some interactions between species that are being modeled. The habitat crosswalk. So I think Laurel covered this a little bit, but basically it's a vulnerability matrix. So it's looking at how each species uses a different habitat and how vulnerable they are and how sensitive they are to disruptions in that habitat. So you can look Mid-Atlantic or New England, select different species, and then this is also broken down into age class. Species narratives are also here, so that was on the species page, but they're here as well. And so this is kind of just like a text-based description of what you see in that crosswalk matrix. So reports. So metadata, I kind of covered this already, but all of our metadata, every data set that we're working with is listed here. You can go through and, look at, well, that one's coming soon, pick the wrong one, but you can look at any of these and kind of get an idea about that data set. We have a few reports here. So we have an inshore report, we have a summary report, and then the crosswalk has a report. Again, a lot of these are coming soon and being added to all the time. And then I kind of touched on this a little bit, but we are bringing a lot of data together that has different methodology that's collected at different time periods. And so there's a bottom trawl survey comparison and a SANE survey comparison. And so this is just a table that gives you all the information about where this data was collected, what mesh size was used, what's their survey design, even head rope, foot rope, duration of the survey, what time of year they survey, years. So all of that is in this table so that when you're combining these different surveys, you can kind of think about, are we using the same methods? Are we looking at the same time periods? And then just kind of a little cleaner way to look at some of those time periods. This is a table of the years surveyed by each of the surveys in the data set, and then the months. So if you want to compare, a certain month in one survey to another, you want to make sure that the data is actually being collected in both of those months. So I think that's our real quick overview of the Data Explorer. I encourage everybody to take a look, dive into it, send me questions, comments, and if there's improvements, things that you think I could add to it, let me know, because it's all still in progress. So I kind of just want to make the best tool possible for exploring these data sets and serving up Neuro products.
Well, that's awesome. That's really cool. I think Sean just has a quick question before we move on.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's a really cool tool, and I look forward to digging into it a little bit more. I wonder, though, the example you showed was the NIMS bottom trawl survey, but you also had stuff like south of Hatteras all the way down to Florida. So are you merging South Atlantic bottom trawl survey with the Northeast bottom trawl survey in that data set?
Yeah, so if you're looking at a single species, we are combining those. And I just recently, it's not on this version of the app yet, but I just recently created kind of a catch per unit effort. So it takes into account the swept area for each survey to kind of help deal with some of those changes or those differences in survey intensity and some of that. But it's definitely a big caveat is use common sense or think about what you're doing before you're combining some of these data sets.
Yeah, I guess that was going to be my follow-up question. That was sort of, are you just sort of providing those raw catch data from toe by toe catch data, and obviously merging the surveys is somewhat problematic.
For sure. Yeah.
And I also wonder though, then are those caveats clearly stated on the website so that way a novice user isn't going to stumble right into those things? And maybe you showed it and I just didn't see it as you were quickly flipping through.
No, they are not on the current, but they will be on the next version, which should be out in the next few weeks. So okay. Yes, that's definitely a good point.
Great. Yeah, it's an awesome tool. Looking forward to using
it. Jessica Coakley, you have a quick question?
Just a quick follow-up on to Sean's question as well. One thing to note is that while you can explore the surveys on our site, there's no way to download or access